Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the First Class Second Place podcast. I'm your host, Jason Enrique, and with me today I have a very special guest who insists that she do her own introduction, and I'm going to go ahead and let her do it. Why don't you go ahead and start?
Thank you, and that's a fact. My name is Bianca Arroyo, but everybody calls me Binky, and in my sorority, Music Mobson Sorority Incorporated, I'm also known as the lyricist.
The lyricist.
Yes, the
All
lyricist.
right, well, Binky, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. All right, so let me start off the show with the question that I ask everybody that comes on to the show. Please tell me the beginning of your Jersey story, meaning like where were you born and raised, and what was your upbringing like?
Well, I was born in Christ Hospital in Jersey City.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I lived in Hoboken.
Hudson County kid.
Yeah, my whole entire life. My family, my parents actually went to Hoboken High School. They were high school sweethearts, got married. You know, the traditional, typical Puerto Rican story, I guess you can say, love story.
Okay.
And then kind of took after their footsteps until like high school. I got into high tech in North Bergen at that time, but now they relocated in Secaucus. It's like a whole college campus now.
When you were growing up in Hoboken, what kind of dreams and aspirations did you have? Like, because as kids, we always have these outlandish things like, oh, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be a ballerina, or something like that. Was there anything out of the norm that you really wanted to be, or was it just something that you wanted to do that was like really simple?
To be honest with you, to have a dream, and the reason why I say that is because I was born partially deaf. And I actually had a huge learning disability. So when I was growing up, like I wasn't really talking. I was making noises with my mouth, and that was a way of communicating.
I think they say that they sounded phonetically.
Yeah,
Okay,
like it wasn't. So I couldn't read, I couldn't write, and then I was on medications a lot. I was in and out of the doctors, and it was almost to a point that they said that the weather was affecting my health too. So my parents were gonna end up leaving to like Florida if I didn't progress in the future. And then I don't know, like I went to tutoring, the whole 9 yards. My mom would literally sit up with me at night going over textbooks, books, numbers, like that. Maybe memory would help me like become smarter than what I was.
Right.
Then third grade came, and I don't know what happened. Things kind of shifted into gear where I was able to retain information in my hearing, was improving all of a sudden. And then
wow.
I wouldn't call myself a genius, but
well, don't sell yourself short. Who knows? Maybe it's just going to take a little bit of time to unlock that part of your brain as well.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe one day you'll actually find out like the biggest math problem that nobody's ever solved. You'd be like the new Goodwill Hunting or some shit. I don't know.
It's crazy that you mentioned math, because math ended up being my favorite subject because it was the first subject that I was able to understand.
Yeah, well then, I don't know what that says about me, because I can't figure out the math for the life of me. Basically, and I told this before on my show, that a big reason why I never finished college was because I couldn't, for the life of me, there's just something about my brain that just can't compute algebra. And I was in danger of failing it, and I had to drop it 3 times. And that and a bunch of other personal things that's too much to talk about right now prevented me from actually graduating college and so on and so forth. So I never got a college degree. But I remember specifically that math is just not my forte. I know multiplication, division, adding and subtracting. That's about it. I don't know anything about, and this is actually weird how, I wasn't able to get algebra, but for some reason I was able to get geometry better. I don't know. It was just a part of my brain that understood geometry better than algebra, and supposedly geometry is harder.
It is.
I don't know how that works, but that's just the weird intricacies of our brains sometimes and how they do it. But yeah, no, I did everything that I could. I tried doing tutoring. I tried staying behind, doing extra work. I was watching a lot of YouTube videos, and I just couldn't get it. And then afterwards, I just realized that, what, I'm just one of those people that's not just I'm just not able to get algebra at all. So, but anyway, so math was your favorite subject. What other likings in school did you take as you were growing up and started to really compute things better?
I would say writing. Because I felt like you were turning a piece of paper of nothing into something.
That's a fact.
So it was like, you're the artist. So that's how I got into like writing and being able to tell stories, or like if we had to do essays, my essays are pretty immaculate, and then it kind of transitioned into work too, because I'm actually a really good report writer as well.
Nice. Now, when you started writing these stories and like these spoken words and so on and so forth, but did you do it with the intent of doing it that way, or were these just simply you putting thoughts to your paper, putting your thoughts on paper, and then afterwards it just elevated from there?
It would be thoughts being put on paper, but it was weird in a sense because spoken word kind of just came to me in a sense where lyrics kind of just popped up in my head, even though they really weren't lyrics. They're more spoken word content and poetry vibes. I would literally have to stop what I'm doing and either write it down before I forgot the thought, or like, as time went on and smartphones became a thing, I was able to just go on my notepad and jot it down and then return to it after.
Right. See, two things about what you just said right there. So I think I may have spoken about this before on my show. I'm not 100% sure, but I'll just tell it right now. I actually started the same way as you. And what I mean by that is when I was younger, I felt, looking back on everything is hindsight 2020. There was a time in my life when I was younger where I started to realize, and everybody else was noticing, that I had a habit of talking to myself. And I realized that possibly the real reason why I was doing that was because at a certain time in my life as a kid, I felt like I was alone. I didn't really have anybody to speak to about my problems. And I just needed to get it out, even if it means mumbling to myself. But everybody was looking at me like I was a psychopath or whatever. And my mom was afraid of people judging her son. Like, why is he acting that way? Why is he doing this, so and that? And she would be embarrassed by it. And then she had an idea where instead of just talking out loud, for lack of a better term, why don't I just write it down? So then that's what I started to do. And I would just put down every little single thought that I had on a piece of paper. I went through notebooks and pens like crazy. Like I would have put Office Depot out of business with the amount of thoughts that I was doing and writing. And then all of a sudden I got into I started to have an affinity for music. And then afterwards, fast forward to my adult life, I was actually doing music for a while. Like I was a songwriter and I was rapping for a bit. But there was a time where I just, and even in a time now that we live in with digital, with technology and stuff, I would say that if I was still doing music to this day, I'll probably still be that pad and pen guy, because I'm still that person. Like ever since, I don't know what age, at a very young age, I don't go anywhere without a pen now. Like I feel like I'm not anywhere without. I always have my phone, my wallet, my keys, and a pen.
I feel like it's a necessity.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But but the point that I'm getting at is that even though I've realized that technology is a necessity more than we like to admit, I still hold on to the old school nature of me just having a pen and a pen and a pad, because that's just my own comfort level.
I agree with you. It started your foundation.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
And it's your comfortability.
Right. Exactly. That's perfect comfortability. So then afterwards, you started to write down your thoughts on paper and so on and so forth, and then they started turning into spoken words and lyrics and so on and so forth. I would say with that kind of skill, did you realize right away that it was something that you were really immaculate at, or was it something that you felt like as time went on you just became better and better and better?
I wouldn't say that I was immaculate at it. It was just more like, I come from like, my mom raised me. Like my parents got divorced when I was 4 years old. And,
mine pretty early age too, like around like 8 or 9.
And it was, it was a rocky divorce situation at the end of the day. Like, there was things that me and my brother kind of went through it together.
That was going to be my next question. Like, do you have any siblings?
Yeah. I have a full blood brother. I have a half sister when my dad remarried. And then I have a stepsister through my dad's new marriage that he had.
Okay. Now, with your full-blooded brother, the one that comes from both parents, biologically, what's his relationship like? If you don't mind me asking, what's the relationship like with the parents? Like, is there a situation where like he favors one parent more than the other, or vice versa? Or because I'll tell you right now, like I have 2 siblings, and one of them actually had a closer relationship with my father than the others. Like there wasn't any animosity, there wasn't any drama or anything like that. It was just for some reason one of my siblings was able to have a real deeper conversation with one parent more than the other ones, and I was wondering if like you had that going on with either one of your parents, or if your brother did as well.
Well, for me personally, I actually cut my dad out of my life back in 2018.
Okay.
And haven't really looked back since then. My brother, I wouldn't call it a love-hate relationship, but there's just sometimes we just bump heads and we need space.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but the love is always there when it comes at the end of the day, because there's things that me and him seen in our childhood, and we understood each other more as adults now,
Mm-hmm.
and putting things in perspective. So when it comes down to it, family's family, you know.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it. I mean, I can tell you right now that there's some family members of mine that I haven't spoken to or seen in quite some time. I'm talking about years. But that's not to say that I hate them or have any ill will towards them. It's just, for the best way I could describe it is, I just don't have any time for their toxicity in my life.
I agree with that. The way I see it is I could love you from a distance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or you can even love me through social media, since, you know, everybody seems to follow each other, whether they love or hate each other.
Exactly. Social media it's a good platform, but it can also be very toxic.
It's a gift and a curse. It really is, because, listen, I'm old school by nature in the sense that I feel like I don't necessarily need social media. And I've actually told this to a couple of people that if I wasn't doing a podcast, I probably wouldn't have social media at all, because the only reason I feel like I have social media nowadays is just for this platform.
Sometimes that's a good thing, though. You don't, like, at the end of the day, if you could change one life, you could be saving 1,000 lives. So what if one person that you have on your show is impacting one person that could be impacting another person? That's why you can't stop either.
No, and you make a great point, because I've actually been something like that actually has happened to me not long ago. See, I was it was actually on another guy's platform, not on my platform, but that person has been on my platform as well. Shout out to Tyson of Let's Talk Jets Radio. I had the honor of being featured on a show. And they usually mostly do sports contents, football related, but every now and then, like once in a blue moon, the host will like to talk about mental health, because it's something that he's very passionate about, especially with mental health awareness and suicide awareness and so on and so forth. We had a really deep conversation, and it was one that I actually finally said some things that I've been holding on to for years, and I felt like I was in a comfortable platform to do it. And then when it was over, I actually had somebody, I believe his name is Jonathan, that reached out to me on Twitter. This is a guy that I never met before in my life. He lives all the way in Vegas. I've been to Nevada, but I've never been to Vegas before. But just being able to reach out, having that platform to reach out to him, and reaching out to me on social media to thank me for being able to realize that he's not alone, that was one of the best feelings that anybody could feel. Yeah, it definitely was a highlight of my day, of that day.
I definitely can relate to that. There's just so many people have so many stories to tell, and
Right.
you don't know how you're going to impact somebody until you speak about it.
Right. And that was one of the things I had to learn later on in life, because, it's funny when people see me doing this podcast thing now and everything, I tend to tell them that before I even had this, I had a lot of social anxiety, and I just didn't really say anything to anybody. I was really shy. I kept quiet, didn't really have a social life. And they say that, well, you would never think it, because you're doing this. And I feel like, well, maybe this is the outlet that I needed to get out, to, finally get it out. Because if not, I probably would have just been a recluse or a mute or whatever, because I just was worried about trying to please everybody so goddamn much instead of worrying about my own happiness.
That's how society puts it out there, though.
What's that?
That's how society puts people out there, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sometimes we don't talk about the elephant in the room.
Right.
And you need, and then you're put into this bubble, and you have to conform to what society wants or what they think of you, what is expected of you, until you decide to just throw it all in the air and be like, I'm going to make my own platform.
Right. Now, have you ever been in a situation where you felt like you were in a safe place talking to somebody that you feel like you can confide into, and you needed to get out whatever you was going through in your head and in your heart and so on and so forth? But then afterwards, all of that perspective changed, in the sense that you feel like you can't open up to anybody because they would either judge you, or they would tell you to stop acting that way, or just, snap out of it. That's one thing that gets me. Like, I remember I'm trying to pour my heart and soul out to somebody, and their only response was, well, snap out of it. And they clearly didn't get it. And so when things like that happen, it makes you realize, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't open my heart up to somebody that I think that I could, or anybody for that matter, because I'm just going to get the same response.
Well, that took me years, to be honest with you. Since I was a little kid, I've always suppressed my feelings. I never really spoke about my feelings. Mainly also too because I'm part of the LGBTQ community.
Mm-hmm.
I'm I mean, if you want to put labels on, I'm not really big on labels. I'm bisexual, if you want to put it that way.
Whatever you want.
But,
yeah.
You know, I come from the Hispanic background, Puerto Rican, and you know, your parents come from a traditional background household where in God's eyes it's not okay or whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. And you know, it was a battle for me when even as a little kid, I already knew by like the age of 9, like I was like, you know, I like girls. Right. And but I would suppress those feelings because, you know, you're constantly being told you got to follow the word of God and this and that. And, you know, you don't want to let your family down and it's not okay or whatever the case may be. And then, you know, my coming out was rough. You know, my mom didn't accept it at all. Like, there was points that I was literally hiding my true self. And, like, I didn't start dressing the way I was dressing until I got to college. You know, I was still wearing emails clothing. You know, I'm still a little bit of both ways because I love being a female. At the end
Just
of the
being
day.
yourself.
And it took my mom to my sophomore year of college, where my teammates literally at that time, I went to Rutgers, Newark. I played softball, and they literally were like, "Bianca, you can't keep living behind closed doors anymore. You just." As much as you're scared or whatever the case may be, you're sacrificing your happiness for what? And they were like, we're going to come with you. You're going to dress the way you've been dressing at school. Mm-hmm. And it was New Year's Eve, believe it or not. I came home, and it was before 12 o'clock, and all eyes were on me, and everybody was just like, oh, like this is happening right now. And then, you know, I got a little liquor in my system, and then when
a little liquid courage.
Yeah, when midnight came, the first person I hugged was my mom, and I told her, I was like, I'm sorry, but I'm not sacrificing my happiness for you anymore.
Well, you know, kudos to you for being that brave and so on and so forth, because it's sort of a similar situation in my family. Like, I don't want to put any names out there, put anybody necessarily on blast, but what I will say is, there is a family member where they had to come out, and unfortunately they have a parent that won't accept who they are because of religious beliefs and also our old school teachings with Hispanics and everything. Like you say, you're Puerto Rican, I'm Colombian and Costa Rican. But it doesn't matter because the old school parents, they still follow that narrative. And unfortunately, and this is why I don't like to talk about politics or religion, so to speak, because I have so many different hot takes and about the whole subject and everything, and I know it doesn't vibe with everybody's way of thinking and views, but I will say that I feel like a topic like religion is basically making something like that worse for others that make it feel like it's not okay to actually come out and tell what somebody's really feeling inside, because they think that, you know, religion is just a cure-all, or, you know, it's the only way of life to live by. And I think that's unfair because, you know, I think we're learning more and more in this day and age that we have more freedom than we really think.
No, I definitely agree with that. You know, I have my own religious platforms. Like, you know, I don't fade away from what people believe. At the end of the day, whether you believe in God, a spirit, a higher power, that's right. Completely up to you. Me personally, I believe in God. He made me who I am, and I just rock with it.
Right. But I understand where you're coming from, especially like I'm not, you know, I'm a straight man myself, but I absolutely have empathy for people of whatever, you know, whatever they believe or whatever orientation they are, because I don't want to be a hypocrite, and at the same time I just want to let it go of all that negativity in general. I mean, I just feel like when people try to like have debates or, you know, have their own views on why of the opposite and so on and so forth, it just compounds too much negative energy and that you're building up and so on and so forth. And I don't want to live in a world like that. That's just my own personal opinion.
No, I agree with you. At the end of the day, there's so much beauty in life. Why are we going to waste time and energy sitting here arguing and debating on something when I'm still going to view the way I view things? You're still going to view things the way you view things. Why not just focus on something else that actually brings, I guess, substance to life and then enjoy it?
And I think, and, you know, this might be, you know, maybe I won't get into it because it might be a little too controversial. I'm not trying to get canceled out here, but maybe I'll say that for another day, or I'll tell you off air. Yeah. So I just want to get back into the spoken word thing. Like, so getting back to that, and then explain to me a little bit more about how you delved into that world and how you've used it to really use it as your own therapy.
Well, with all the obstacles that I faced, like, I had the learning disability going on. My parents were getting a divorce at a young age. It wasn't a really, in my personal opinion, like, nobody should have seen some of the things that I've seen as a child. Not to throw my parents under the bus, like, God bless my mom for stepping up the way she did.
Of course, yeah.
And then growing up into, like, having the coming out story. And then, believe it or not, like, I'm a sexual assault victim of the age of 13 and 27. And there were two different perspectives on those things. So since I didn't open up to anybody, or I never felt comfortable enough to speak up to anybody, I was suppressing those feelings, and me writing was a way of me letting it out. So I always just tell people, if you really want to know the real me, you listen to my spoken word. And that's how I had to continue doing it. Do I hit roadblocks from time to time? Yeah, but then once it's on, it keeps spinning and spinning and spinning.
You still do it?
I still do it from time to time. There's like 3 pieces that I've been working on, but they're not done yet. Mm-hmm. I do have chapter 2 done. If some people would like to go on my Instagram is binkyfufu_17. I do have a very powerful piece that I actually professionally got filmed. It's called Letters to My Rapist. I do have chapter 2 done.
Okay.
I just haven't filmed it yet.
Right. I'm actually glad that you brought that up, because that was actually going to be what I wanted to bring up next. And that's actually what really put me over the top and wanting to bring you on this episode, because I think what I admired out of that whole thing was your bravery. Because unfortunately, this is something that has happened to countless people. It doesn't matter what gender you are. And it just, that it just sees, it's just blind to anybody. It's just some evil that's out there in the world, unfortunately. And a lot of people are in silence because of, that kind of experience. So what actually gave you the balls, for lack of a better term, to actually just go out there and let it all out, spill your heart out, spill your guts out, and be actually real with something that people may conceive as taboo?
Well, I'm going to kind of fast forward. Like, my 13-year-old, I'll run that back, but what transpired, Letters to My Rapist, is what happened to me at 27.
Okay.
So
we're gonna Tarantino this, like, the beginning is the end, and so on and so forth. Okay, so
and then there were also 2 different scenarios. Just when I was 27, something happened to me. I was out. A lot of liquor was involved. I was around a lot of people I knew. I could literally tell you, I remember from what time I went was somewhere up until what time, what I was wearing, what I was drinking, who I was with, who I was around. And then all of a sudden, I didn't remember, besides opening up my eyes and waking up in a hotel room that didn't belong to me. And literally, I jumped out of the bed, hear a voice, and it literally was, "Are you okay?" And turn around and realize I was never around this person majority of my night. I knew who they were. I don't even remember, maybe we exchanged the words hi at some point, but it was just a weird feeling. And then my body kind of went into shock after that and stuff like that. But fast forward, I had to keep my composure in a sense, and I didn't really want to talk to nobody. And the first person I told was like my brother, because the way I introduced it to him, I wanted to know if maybe I was bugging out in a sense, like this really happened. And so I gave him the scenario, and he was like, "Yo, like this, like that's not okay. Like my man's like took advantage of you, type of whatever." And then that's when I confessed to him, I'm talking about me. And then like he cried, and it was one of the hardest things I could do. And then Letters to My Rapist wasn't developed yet. What developed was like, because I wanted to handle it the way I wanted to handle it. Because in that situation, I felt like something was taken from me. And since I was victimized back at the age of 13, I felt like this was my opportunity to be the narrator to my story and not be controlled by my perpetrator. So, you know, I did speak to a couple lawyers and, like, you know, kind of giving them the scenario and stuff like that. At that time, I didn't know what I want to do, because at the end of the day, I'm also in a certain profession that things get escalated to a whole nother level. And then also too, rape and sexual assault in general is the most underreported crime in the world. Not in the nation, not in the state, in the world. So, and me being in the profession that I am, I also know the statistics and the success rate and what's to come when, like, once you open that door, there's no coming out of that door. Like, so there was a lot of factors playing into my decision making. And then, you know, even though I was victimized in the past, my thought process is like, can I really go through this mental journey? And I don't know, like, there's a lot of unknown. And I didn't, like, not saying that I'm not strong enough, but I wasn't sure if I could really put myself through the trenches and make it out and see the light at the end of the tunnel, because, you know, the success rate isn't high. And if I go through this journey and I'm battling and going to war and not getting that outcome that I'm looking for, I didn't want to, like, set myself up for a negative outcome. But what drew me over after that situation happened, I actually got into a detox juicing business, because then I got into, like, a health binge, like, right after, just so I could distract myself, even though it was beneficial to me and stuff like that. But I needed to gear my energy in a different light. But what really activated Letters to My Rapist was I heard through the grapevine that my perpetrator had victimized 2 other victims. And it pissed me off. Like, I was so livid. And that's when the lyrics just started pouring out. And I actually wrote letters to my rapist during that time. I actually did it in the summer. So the time frame, I was 27, so I'm 30 now, so 3 years ago, so 2019, around 2019. That summer, Letters to My Rapist, by the end of August, was done already. But I didn't decide to drop that until February 14th, on Valentine's Day of, I believe it was 2020.
Right before the pandemic, too. Well, I mean, first and foremost, I want to, you know, give my condolences, because I'm sorry you had to go through that, because it's an unfortunate situation that, you know, not just you, but anybody can go through. But I also want to give you your props and your credit and your, you know, everything, for being brave about it and being out there. And I get the sense that it wasn't just also cathartic for you, in the sense that, you know, you did it for yourself, but this is something that you wanted to spread your awareness out there, because you know that this is, you just mentioned right now, based on with your job, you know, the statistics and so on and so forth. So it really prompted you to really get your message out there. Now, does that, with you wanting to get your message out there, does that have any negative impact on maybe your work life or anything like that? I'm
going to say it's like 50-50 in a sense.
So there's a little bit of a risk that's involved.
Yeah, because literally once that video dropped, it was like I already got phone calls. I can't really get into details specifically, but right. I will say is how you said it's like a curse and like it's a good advantage at the same time. During that time, it allowed so many people to open up. I'm talking about from like lieutenants to sergeants to other police officers around the state, and people just like I was getting bombarded with so many stories at once. And originally Letters to My Rapist was kind of allowing me to heal in a sense, because I wanted to be heard. I feel like there was just so much going on, and it was like I was in a corner and I could be screaming on the top of my lungs, but nobody could hear me. But it was more like I wanted to have like a drop the mic moment, and also to let my rapist know, like, I know, and I'm gonna let it be known, and I'm gonna make you feel uncomfortable. And
basically feel like they got nowhere to hide.
Exactly. And I think I've accomplished that. But for everybody else, I wanted to also, like, sometimes you need to speak up. Not because you're looking for justice or like you're looking for the outcome that you're looking for, just because you just need to be heard. And a lot of people suppress those feelings. I had men reaching out to me. I've had family members that I've never thought in my life that had been victimized until I dropped this video. And don't get me wrong, like, you do relive the story, but when it comes to work, like, I have dealt with more sexual assault victims more than usual, but this is where it's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because I could relate to them and let them know, like, you're not alone in this. Mm-hmm. And I'm a person in uniform that it's happened to. But it's also a curse in a sense because depending on the situation, sometimes it opens up wounds. And then I got to go home and light up my hookah and kind of like, relax myself and then wake up the next day to do it all over again.
Wow. Now, staying on your career a little bit. So you mentioned before that you're a police officer. How long have you been in the law enforcement now?
5 years.
You've been in 5 years. What do you feel like is the end game with as far as that's concerned? Like, is there a certain level of goal or a certain, part of, a certain height that you want to reach with your career, so to speak? Like I guess they call it rankings in your department.
I eventually want to work my way up the ranks and stuff like that. I took the sergeant exam. I passed the test. I did it without, taking any classes. All I did was read a book and that's it, just to fill it out. But you get put on a list. I'm not really that high on the list, but I was expecting that, kind of just wanted to get my feet wet like that the next time it's go time.
Right. But the point is that you actually want to, like, progress your career. That's the word that I was looking for. Progress your career in law enforcement, not just relegated to what you do right now.
Oh no, absolutely. And a statement I will say is, being a female police officer in general is hard. You're in a male dominated field, and not only that, I'm a minority. And then on top of that, I'm part of the LGBTQ community.
So it's like a quadruple whammy.
Yeah. Not saying it's a negative or a positive, but...
No, it's not a negative or positive. It's just the facts. That's what they are. These are just the ramifications, the hurdles you got to go through.
Yeah, and then at the end of the day, the field itself is very militant. There's a lot of things I don't agree with, but at the end of the day, I have to do what I have to do. Because the way I see it, I work for Hoboken. I grew up there. I played softball there. I've even played PAL football there. And the way I see it, that's my home. That's my community. And a lot of people I grew up with, they see me. They see me all the time, and I still treat them with respect the way they see me. I didn't let the uniform change me. When I need to be assertive, that's when I become assertive. If I need to, be polite, I'm polite. I still treat people as human beings because the way I see it, and the reason why I became a cop, if I have to take a bullet for somebody's life to live to see another day, I'm cool with that. That might change if I ever have kids in the future and I get married. Right. But I can't speak for everybody else, but that's how I view it. So I'm always going to take care of home to the best of my abilities.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this question, because this is actually really fascinating to me, and could be a little bit controversial to the audience, but I'm just going to ask it either way, just out of my own curiosity. So you strike me as somebody that grew up in a certain environment where law enforcement is not necessarily respected. I can't say the same for myself, so that's why it's kind of like fascinated me, for lack of a better term. So the question I want to ask you is, like, being from the environment that you grew up in, where they feel like they don't necessarily respect the badge, and then you being a part of that neighborhood, that brotherhood, or whatever they want to call it, of the people in blue. Do you have people from, like, back in your day, whether it's family, friends, or people you grew up with, that look at you differently just because you have a blue uniform and a badge on?
Sometimes. The best way I could describe it, you got people who are realists and pretenders. Mm-hmm. The realists are the ones that do have your back and have been supporting you since day one. Your pretenders, only people that look for benefits out of you. Mm. So, I did have people look at me differently. Like they'll say like the jokes like, "Oh, you're a pig now. You're this and that."
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, just because I decided to choose this career path, it doesn't define me as a person, nor did it change me as a person. Right. I just believe people's maturity level and their thought process, just gotta be educated.
Right.
That's the best way to.
And and it also makes me wonder how much of a more dangerous job has it gotten, as it wasn't already a dangerous job as it is, but how much pressure has it felt ever since the political climate that we live in nowadays, unfortunately?
One thing in the academy that our lieutenant commander at that time, Lieutenant Michael Devine,
mm-hmm.
shout out to him. He would always tell us we're always a step away from prison, and it was true. Whether it's externally or internally, like literally so we're already dealing with the stuff in the streets, but we also face adversity in within our departments. Every department's different, how they run or whatever the case may be. People, let's say somebody decides to put a complaint against me for like a parking ticket or whatever the case may be. At the end of the day, it still goes into internal affairs, and that that's their job. Whoever's put within that unit, they have to investigate it, whether you get exonerated or not. But like just those little things, like one little mistake could literally ruin your whole career, and that's internally and externally. Mm-hmm. What I would say the difference between me back then and now, back then I understand why the world views officers the way they do, because I was, that minority that faced adversity at one point or two in the past. Mm. And now viewing things as an officer and understanding things a little bit more on the police side, I understand both sides. So I feel like if people are angry, that's fine. And if we're angry, that's fine too. There's no right or wrong, and not everybody could view things that way in both limelights. Yeah.
Now, another question that kind of came to mind, and again, might come off a little controversial, but I would like you to actually honest to the best of your ability, or if you can't comment, then whatever. But so I have a friend of mine. He is in the Army, mm-hmm. and he was actually telling me stories that because of the brotherhood that the military has, he's even told me stories about somebody that maybe a white boy or something like that, a white male who is a racist, but because another man who is black or Hispanic or Asian or whatever is also his brother in arms, he's gonna fall on sword for them as well, no matter what. Because of the brotherhood, because of what the military is much bigger than his own racism, but it still doesn't change the fact that he still has a certain hate in his heart. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, would you feel like the same thing kind of would go on in law enforcement as well? Not to paint a broad stroke over all law enforcement, but let's be honest, there are a couple of bad apples out there in every aspects of life, and unfortunately law enforcement isn't, and they cast over a negative cloud over everybody else that wants to do a good job. But what I'm really trying to get to here is, did you feel like you had those hurdles that, like, if it wasn't for the fact that you were a police officer, that some of your other brothers in arms or whatever would look at you differently because of the fact that you are a member of the LGBTQ community and also a woman and also a minority?
Absolutely. Mm. Absolutely.
Have you actually experienced that besides the times of you being in uniform?
I have, but not within like my profession. I can't get in really details.
Yeah, I'm not asking for details. I'm just trying to ask for a generalization, because I'm just fascinated by these these kinds of questions that I have, and I'm pretty sure that maybe my audience could either be curious as well, or they also know where you're coming from. Mm-hmm.
No, like you listen. People are raised differently. Like, for instance, we live on the north side of Jersey. South Jersey is a completely different world. Mm-hmm. It's more like on the country farm aspect. On top of that, you got Jersey Shore. There's different vibes over there. Yeah. how we're gonna interpret something on the more city life, urban side of things, and how they would interpret something would be completely two different things. So I can't. People are gonna believe what they want to believe and how they feel. You can't change the stripe. You can't change the stripes on a tiger. That's the best way to describe it.
Right.
They can, now we're in a day where, a lawsuit can happen. This person can say this person can say this. They could say, like, do reports against each other and stuff like that. And so I would say, like, people are starting to play nice on a professional aspect because they have to, not because they necessarily want to. It's because they have to.
Right. Yeah, it's just like what you were saying before. Like, they taught you in the academy that you're always one step away from prison. So you always have to keep that in the back of your head. Always. Especially when you're on duty. Yeah. Now, so I want to get back into the spoken word thing a little bit more. What are some of the we talked a little bit about the trials and tribulations of what inspired you to go and get into that kind of realm and so on and so forth, but what are some of the positives that you could take away from the spoken word? Like, would it be the accolades? Would it just be your own mental health, your own well-being? What are some of the positive aspects that you love to focus on when you're being the spoken word artist?
The sense of freedom. Like, it was mine. There's nobody tampering with what I'm doing. Nobody's telling me you should do this, and that. Like, it was my element. And in life we feel like we don't have a lot of control over things, but this is something I can control. Like, this is the work I put in is the work that's going to be projected out. And at first, when I first got into spoken word, I had stage fright. Like, I was writing, but I would never really read it to people or, like, perform it and stuff like that. I didn't really start performing until I got to college. And the only reason why I even performed was because of my sorority. And at that time, I wasn't even a member yet. They were getting to know me, and then they had like an open mic like performance going on, and they were like, well, you're going to perform. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I was like, no, I'm not. And
you were a little bit of a chicken shit, unfortunately.
Yeah, like I was afraid of the stage. Like, I didn't know if I had to, like, walk a certain way. Like, and it's crazy because I do spoken word, but I can't rap to, like, music. Like, that's not my thing. Like, I don't do none of that. And then,
hey, I mean, I know I could stand up on stage and do a podcast with no problem, but I can't do stand-up comedy. So
yeah, no. So they were like, we'll practice with you, we'll get you ready, blah blah blah, and then I did it. But what's crazy? Just before I got on stage, I literally tripped on the last step getting to the stage, and I almost went flying, caught my balance, looked at everybody, laughed, and was like, this is just kidding. And then I introduced myself, and then I went into the piece. But I ended up doing a good job. I felt like my heart was going to be out of my chest. But then as time went on, I was able, from that moment, like, what was I really scared of? Yeah. And I was in a room full of people. Right. So the next thing you know, I liked the feeling of that sense of freedom. Like, it was like, even though there was a lot of people and I was nervous, and once I got into the swing of things and the groove was going, it was just me and the mic. And nobody could take that moment away from me. Right. Whether it was a good performance or a bad performance, at the end of the day, like, that was like a pivotal moment. Like, I could do this. Right. And then as time went on, like, I still performed. I've done women empowerment workshops since then. I've been part of Lupe's seminar that they usually have at Kane. And then I just been able to do it ever since.
Out of all the performances that you've done on stage, what would you say is the one that is your absolute favorite and inspires you to have a better stage presence going forward?
Honestly, when I did the Letters to My Rapist video, because I literally sat there with a concept, and there was every bit of detail in that video was in a connection with something to the piece and to my story, and why I did what I did. Like, for instance, like my film director, his name is Dame. He's actually my fraternity brother. Okay. He pledged out of Montclair, and filmed by Dame. If you guys ever want to look into his work, I actually hit him. I'm like, bro, like, look, this is what's going on. You don't know my story, whatever. And I showed him the piece, and I was like, this is the vision that I have. And the reason why I actually wanted a male to bring the vision to life, it was like since I opened up to my brother about the piece, and you know, as a man, you're gonna want to protect your sister or your female significant person or whatever the case may be. So I wanted a man behind the lens to execute the protection part.
Right. And not only that, but I'm also of the mindset that you don't necessarily have to be a female to go through something like this. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, so anybody that's out there, you know, it doesn't matter if they're male or female or, you know, however they want to, you know, label themselves or don't want to carry labels. The point is that anyone can be a victim.
And when you least expect it, believe it or not, so running it back to 13.
Yeah.
When I was 13, it was forced. Like, I was sober. I wasn't drinking. It was like I left with scars, bruises, and marks on my body. And I kept it a secret this whole entire time. How I got through it mentally, I just did it. And I was playing softball and so many sports at that time that was my focus. Like, you know, softball at that time was like it was like my wife in a sense. Like everything, whatever you were going through, you just left it all in the field kind of thing. And then 27 was different because, you know, there's a lot of things that I should have did after that moment. But at the end of the day, every victim handles things differently. And also being a victim of it twice wasn't something that I sat here and like, oh, this is happening again. And it was different circumstances. So I guess in a sense, like, since things were different, I don't know.
No, I hear where you're coming from, absolutely. And I mean, once again, just kudos to you for your bravery and, you know, putting it out there and so on and so forth. Because I know that in the back of your mind, you're also thinking some of the ramifications that could come along with you being so open. But in this day and age, luckily we have people that are more understanding, and, you know, we want to get these messages out there and so on and so forth. And as far as anybody that doesn't want to hear it or has any, you know, trepidation or, you know, other opposite views of what you have to say, I mean, fuck them. Pretty much, yeah.
One thing I will say is that one of my biggest fears is that I didn't want people feeling sorry for me or pity me for my situation.
Yeah, that's another thing that doesn't get really talked about as much, because we don't want, like, I think that's actually one of the negative connotations that people tend to have, because they want to think all of a sudden you come out with something like this and then they think that you want to be like, oh, woe was me, and so on and so forth, which actually kind of brings me to my next point. So obviously it's a brave thing that you did, and you know, you've gotten many accolades and so on and so forth, but before you actually went out with it, was it something that you just kind of put it out there and then afterwards just let it roll? Or was it something that people closest to you, whether they be family and friends, that knew of the idea but are not happy with the fact that you kind of put it out there?
So the way I did it, it was a secret at first. And I knew I was strategically planning to drop it on Valentine's Day for a reason, like to make a statement. I was gonna run this idea no matter what. The hardest part for me is that I had to tell my mom and my aunt before dropping this video, because I felt like I owed them a conversation, and I didn't want them to find out that way. So that would be my hardest obstacle in a sense. But regardless whether people wanted me to do it or not, I was gonna do it. I was holding myself back because before that video dropped, it was under a year before I decided to drop that video. Because of my profession, there was a lot of things that I had to allocate first. I knew I would be questioned about a lot of things. And I had to be, I wouldn't want to say strategic, but that's the best way to describe. I had to be very strategic in my wording, movements, how I projected the story, how I wanted to connect other things. I also, like, you know, in the video, if you watch it, there's actually like a group of females. Some of them were victims. Some of them were people who knew people who were victims. So I was also taking them into account, like by their involvement, would they get involved in, like if I were to get myself jammed up into something. And I was just willing at that time, because I needed to be heard. Not that I didn't care about the repercussions. I was willing to risk that enough so my voice can be heard.
Oh, bravo to you for that. Absolutely. Couldn't be more proud of you. I mean, listen, we've been speaking for a little bit less than an hour here, but I feel like I appreciate everything that you've said. I appreciate your bravery. I appreciate your willingness. I appreciate, the confidence that you came not only on your own platform, but on my platform as well to, spread the word out there. A little bit of a controversial topic, but I'm willing to look past that, because I feel like this is an important message that needs to be brought out. And listen, I tell everybody this that comes onto my show. If I invite you onto my show, it's because I think that you're a first-class person, first-class tier. So that should say volumes as to why I brought you on, because I think that you have an important message. I think that you're also fucking talented as hell with your spoken words. I want to see more of that stuff. I hope you stay consistent with it. And I never really had this done to anybody on my platform before. But I just want to say thank you for your service and so on and so forth in law enforcement. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so we're about to close out this episode in a little bit. But before we go, I want to ask just one more question that I got to ask everybody that comes on my show, and things on a positive note, and keep it going with the theme of the at the end of the show that everybody seems to appreciate now. You said you haven't heard my show before, which I hopefully you changed that. But so there's going to be a little bit of a surprise. But like I said, it's going to end things on a positive note. And I don't know how much of a movie person you are. I am. But either way, the question that I got for you, Binky Fufu, that is your nickname, right? Okay. If they were to make a movie on your life, which actress or actor would you like to see portray your character, and why?
Oh, that's a good one.
And, they don't have to look like you. They don't have to sound like you. It's just somebody that you admire and you feel like they can
Can I mix two people together?
You know what? That's never been happened before on my show, but I'll allow it.
I would have to say the girl that plays Icebox from Little Giants mixed with America Ferrera.
Okay, all right. I like that. I forget the girl's name who played Icebox in Little Giants. One of my favorite childhood movies, by the way. I'm not even a Giants fan, but I still love the movie either way. But yeah, I gotta look up her name. And America Ferrera. Nobody's had that. And why them specifically?
Well, from Little Giants, Icebox is literally the whole picture of my tomboyish childhood. Like, I told you I played PL football. I was always with the guys. Like that's right. That's how I was raised. And then playing sports was just automatic for me.
What position did you play?
Well, for football, I was a nose guard on defense.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So you're a hell of a tackler.
Yes. And then on offense, I could play pretty much anything on the O-line, but for the most part, I was a guard. And then
and that's amazing to me, because I'm like 5'10". I don't know what your height is, and you look like you have a pretty decent frame, but I feel like now
they could take me now. They could take me. They could probably.
Because I was about to say, if that's the case, I'm afraid that you're gonna fucking whoop my ass down the road or something.
But remember, when I played, I was in middle school. Girls have bigger growth spurts than guys back then.
That is true. So. That is true. I didn't know how far back we were going, but yeah that's. Yeah.
And then so that's why an Icebox, she was strong, but you know how she had that girly moment, that emotional side came in there.
Oh yeah.
That's where I kind of I still got the feminism in me kind of thing. And then America Ferrera, because she's feisty, but she doesn't I could curse.
Yeah, okay. I've been saying fuck shit, asshole all this time. Yeah, go right ahead.
She doesn't take nobody's shit, and that's even behind the camera and in front of the camera. She's real no matter what, to an extent, even though she's playing a character. And that's what I like about her. Me, I said, I label people as, people couldn't dispute me about it, realists and pretenders. I consider myself a realist, and that realism mixed with the tomboyish of Icebox with a little bit of emotion in it, I feel like that's the perfect mix.
Okay, all right, and whether it was one person or the other, no one has said either one. So congratulations on those choices.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so before we get out of here, is there anybody else you want to give a shout out to before we close out?
I want to give a shout out to my mom, Carmen Ortiz, little Carmen, my aunt, my little niece and nephew, Stella and baby X, my cousin, my sorority sisters. Thank you guys for holding me down. For retired Lieutenant Gigante, there's always love on this side. If it wasn't for you to tell me that I gotta finish my story, some of this stuff would have never happened. And to my brothers and sisters in blue and people who faced anything that I faced, just know that you guys are not alone. And I put my Instagram out there, BinkyFufu_17. If you guys need somebody to talk to, I'm only a DM away. So
is that on Instagram only? Any other social media platforms that you're on?
That's the one I use for the most part. I mean, I do have Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
I have a Twitter, but I don't even think I know my login for that anymore. Okay. To be honest with you.
Well, the only reason I ask is because I want everybody to try to reach out to you any way that I can. But if Instagram is the best way to do it, then so be it.
I mean, I have TikTok. I'm a TikTok watcher. Like the videos also on TikTok too. So.
Yeah, well, you never know. There might be some TikTokers that they want to know more about you, or maybe that's another way that they can reach you as well. So, yeah. Is your handle on Instagram and TikTok the same?
Yep.
Okay, and tell them one more time.
BinkyFufu_17.
All right, I like that. And yeah. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought I saw something over there. That's fine. Good. Yeah, no. All right. Well, Bianca, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the fact that not only of your bravery and your story and so on and so forth, but I also appreciate from a personal level of you actually taking a chance on me. You said that you hadn't heard my show before. You never met me before. I'm a complete stranger to you. You don't know me from a can of paint, but you still took a shot and took a chance on coming on my platform and sharing your story. So I appreciate that. And you're always welcome to come on the show anytime.
Always, and thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate
it. Absolutely. Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, you can find me at Enrique _ on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube as well. And don't forget to follow the First Class Second Place podcast page on Instagram as well. This has been the First Class Second Place podcast. We out.